There is a reason Japanese engines routinely hit 300,000 miles, while German engines start choking at half that number. And it has almost nothing to do with engineering quality. It comes down to one brutally simple habit that Japanese manufacturers have been preaching for decades, a habit that German automakers publicly ignored, then quietly adopted after watching their own engines self-destruct. Today, I am breaking down the Japanese oil change rule that BMW, Volkswagen, and Porsche tried to pretend did not matter until their own engine failures forced them to admit the Japanese were right all along. Let me start with the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. The 2025 IC Cars Longest-Lasting Cars study analyzed almost 400 million vehicles to find out which ones were most likely to reach 250,000 miles. The results? Toyota dominated, claiming 10 of the top 25 spots. The Toyota Sequoia came in at number 1 with a 39.1% predicted chance of hitting 250,000 miles. That's more than 8 times the industry average of just 4.8%. Toyota, Honda, Lexus, and Acura were the only 4 brands to beat that average. Not a single German manufacturer made the list. Not BMW, not Mercedes, not Audi, not Porsche, not Volkswagen, zero. Now, you could argue that's because luxury car owners trade up before hitting high mileage. And sure, that's part of it. But here's what nobody talks about. The reason Japanese engines last isn't just better engineering. It's a completely different philosophy around oil changes and maintenance that starts the moment you buy the car. And this is where the story gets really interesting. In Japan, the oil change interval is not treated as a marketing number. It is treated as a survival rule. Let me show you exactly what I mean. In the Japanese domestic market, Toyota recommends changing the oil on naturally aspirated engines every 15,000 kilometers, which is about 9,300 miles. That sounds pretty standard, right? But here is the catch. That is the normal conditions interval for what Toyota calls severe conditions, which includes short trips under 5 miles, stop-and-go traffic, cold weather starts, dusty roads, or frequent full-load driving. The interval gets cut in half to 7,500 kilometers, roughly 4,600 miles. And for turbocharged engines, Toyota in Japan recommends oil changes every 5,000 kilometers, which is about 3,100 miles under normal conditions. Under severe conditions, that drops to 2,500 kilometers, barely 1,500 miles. Let that sink in. Toyota, the company known for bulletproof reliability, tells Japanese turbo engine owners to change their oil between 1,500 and 3,100 miles. Nissan follows a nearly identical pattern in the Japanese domestic market. Naturally aspirated engines get a 10,000 kilometers interval under normal conditions, but turbo engines drop to 5,000 kilometers. Severe conditions cut it in half again. Mitsubishi in Japan does not even bother with the normal versus severe distinction. They flat out recommend oil changes every 5,000 kilometers or every 6 months, whichever comes first, across the board, no exceptions. Now, here is the part that should make every BMW, Audi, and Volkswagen owner uncomfortable. While Japanese manufacturers were telling their domestic customers to change oil every 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers on turbo engines, do you know what German manufacturers were recommending? BMW was telling owners their oil was good for 15,000 miles, that is roughly 24,000 kilometers, on turbocharged engines, running in all conditions. BMW's condition-based service system was cheerfully counting up to 15,000 miles or more between oil changes, and BMW marketed this as a feature. Less maintenance, they said. Advanced engineering, they said. The oil lasts longer because our engines are superior, they said. If you follow the Japanese intervals, a turbocharged engine gets its oil changed roughly 30 times over 150,000 kilometers. Following BMW's old 15,000-mile recommendation, that same engine would get about 10 oil changes, 3 times fewer. on a high-stress turbocharged engine that generates more heat, more combustion byproducts, and more wear on the oil than a naturally aspirated motor. The math was never on BMW's side, and the engines told the story. Independent BMW shops started documenting what happens inside these motors after years of extended oil intervals. Valve covers came off, and mechanics found thick layers of black sludge coating the internals. Oil passages were partially blocked. Cam journals showed accelerated wear. One well-known BMW specialist shop documented a plug of sludge so thick it actually prevented the oil from draining out of the engine during a standard oil change. They had to physically remove the blockage by hand. This was not a neglected vehicle. This was a car that followed BMW's own recommended service intervals. The Vanos variable valve timing systems on BMW engines proved especially vulnerable. These systems rely on precise oil pressure and clean oil flow to function. When the oil degrades, the Vanos starts malfunctioning, throwing check engine lights and causing rough running. BMW dealer technicians openly admitted on forums that the Vanos issues were directly connected to oil quality and extended intervals. And it wasn't just BMW. Mercedes promoted similar extended intervals and was hit with widespread transmission and engine issues. They marketed their automatic transmission fluid as a lifetime fill. Never needs changing, they claimed. The actual transmission manufacturer, Zef, recommended fluid changes every 50,000 to 60,000 miles. Mercedes said never. Guess who was right? ZF. Mercedes eventually had to issue technical service bulletins reversing their lifetime fluid recommendation after transmission failures piled up. So, what happened? In July 2013, BMW quietly sent out a letter to owners and dealers. They were shortening the oil change interval from 15,000 miles to 10,000 miles. No fanfare, no press release, no explanation of why it was set too long in the first place, and absolutely no mention of the engine damage that may have already occurred in vehicles following the old schedule for years. Just a quiet revision that brought them significantly closer to what the Japanese had been recommending all along. General Motors had a similar reckoning around the same time. They issued a recall for 800,000 vehicles to shorten oil change intervals because their oil life monitors were letting owners go too long between changes, resulting in premature mechanical failures. Now, BMW's current interval sits at 10,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first. For M performance vehicles, the first service happens around 7,500 miles. Porsche recommends 7,500 to 10,000 miles. Volkswagen turbocharged engines in the U.S. market now call for 10,000 miles under normal conditions and 5,000 miles under severe conditions. Look at those numbers. Volkswagen's severe condition interval for turbocharged engines is now 5,000 miles. Converted to kilometers, that's roughly 8,000 kilometers. Sound familiar? It should. It's essentially the same interval that Japanese manufacturers have been recommending for decades. The Germans didn't innovate their way to this number. They failed their way to it. But here's what makes the Japanese approach truly different, and what German manufacturers still have not fully adopted. It is not just about the interval, it is about the entire philosophy. Japanese car culture in Japan does not treat maintenance as an inconvenience. It treats it as a responsibility. Japanese drivers routinely let the engine warm up for 30 to 60 seconds before driving. That short pause allows oil to circulate and reach critical components before the engine is put under load. Cold oil is thick and sluggish. It does not protect moving parts the way warm oil does. Flooring it from a cold start is like asking an athlete to sprint without stretching. The damage is not obvious immediately, but it compounds over time. The actual driving style follows the same pattern. Smooth, gradual acceleration. Early, gentle, braking, keeping the engine in its comfortable revolutions per minute range rather than constantly revving to redline or lugging it at low revolutions per minute. It is not slow driving. It is deliberate driving. The engine spends its life in the sweet spot rather than being constantly stressed. Then there is the maintenance culture itself. Japan has the Shaken system, one of the most rigorous mandatory vehicle inspections in the world. Every vehicle must pass this comprehensive safety and emissions inspection every 2 years. The cost typically runs between 100,000 and 200,000 yen, which is roughly $800 to $1,600. Inspectors check braking systems, steering, lighting, exhaust emissions, and structural integrity, with zero tolerance for non-compliance. On top of that, Japanese law requires an additional 12-month maintenance check covering about 60 inspection points. Many Japanese owners also follow a recommended 6-month check that often includes an oil change. This creates an environment where cars are maintained proactively rather than reactively. Problems get caught early. Nothing slides. Japanese drivers commonly keep detailed maintenance logbooks. Every oil change, every service, every unusual noise gets documented. Over time, this becomes a running history of the car's health. Small issues get identified before they become catastrophic failures. The results speak for themselves. Cooling system failure causes approximately 25% of engine failures worldwide, most often because of corrosion from neglected coolant. Japanese maintenance culture flushes coolant on schedule every time. Timing belt failures on interference engines cause bent valves and require expensive top-end rebuilds. Japanese owners replace timing belts and associated components exactly at the recommended interval. They do not negotiate or postpone. Many Japanese drivers add fuel system cleaner every 10,000 kilometers or so to keep fuel injectors clean and combustion efficient. They change transmission fluid before there are signs of trouble, not after. These are not expensive habits, they are just consistent ones. And consistency is what separates a 300,000-mile engine from a 150,000-mile engine. Now contrast that with how German cars are typically maintained in Western markets. Many BMW and Mercedes owners rely entirely on the vehicle's onboard service indicator. The car says the oil is fine, then it must be fine. But here is the thing most people do not realize. Most oil life monitors are not actually analyzing your oil. They run an algorithm based on mileage, engine revolutions, and time. They make an educated guess. They do not know about the quality of fuel you use, the particulate matter in the air you drive through, or whether you have been doing mostly cold starts and short trips that never let the engine fully reach operating temperature. Blackstone Laboratories, one of the most respected used oil analysis companies, has analyzed thousands of oil samples from BMW engines. Their data consistently shows that while modern synthetic oils can technically survive 10,000 to 12,000 miles before chemical breakdown, the contamination level, the soot loading, and the additive depletion make shorter intervals significantly better for long-term engine health. Their recommendation for most turbocharged engines is to change between 5,000 and 7,500 miles. That is the Japanese number. The cost difference is trivial when you put it in perspective. An oil change on a BMW runs roughly $100 to $150 at an independent shop. If you do one extra oil change per year by shortening your interval, that is $150 per year. Over a 10-year ownership period, that is $1,500 in extra oil changes. A BMW engine replacement can cost $15,000 to $25,000. A transmission rebuild on a Mercedes can cost $5,000 to $8,000. The old saying holds, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this brings us to the deeper lesson that goes far beyond oil changes. The Japanese approach to vehicle longevity is not about any single maintenance habit. It is about a mindset. Japanese manufacturers design engines conservatively, prioritizing durability over extracting every last horsepower from a given displacement. Toyota's manufacturing tolerances are reportedly up to 50% tighter than some competitors. They use timing chains instead of belts on most modern engines, which can last the lifetime of the motor with proper oil maintenance. They stick with proven, reliable systems rather than chasing every new technology trend. German manufacturers, on the other hand, have historically pushed the envelope on performance and complexity. Turbocharging, direct injection, variable valve timing, active engine management systems. These technologies deliver incredible performance, but they also demand more from the lubricating oil. You cannot run a high-stress turbocharged direct injection engine on the same maintenance schedule as a naturally aspirated motor from the 1990s. The Japanese knew this from day one. The Germans took over a decade of engine failures to figure it out. The irony is that German engineers knew the truth all along. Volkswagen's own internal dealer guide, the ELSA system, quietly classified countries like Russia, Ukraine, and much of Eastern Europe as severe condition markets with shorter oil change intervals. The reasoning is simple: dusty roads, extreme temperatures, frequent cold starts. But if you live in a big city anywhere in the world and do mostly short trips in stop-and-go traffic, you are operating under the exact same severe conditions. The manufacturer just does not want to tell you that, because advertising a 5,000-mile oil change interval does not look as good on the brochure as 15,000 miles. So, if you are driving a turbocharged European car and following the manufacturer's maximum recommended interval, you are likely shortening the life of your engine. Not dramatic in the short term, but significantly over the 100,000 to 200,000 mile mark, which is exactly when second and third owners are paying for the consequences. The original owner leased the car for 3 years, followed the extended interval, and handed it off. The problems surface years later, long after the warranty has expired. The Japanese oil change rule is not complicated. Change your oil more frequently than the manufacturer suggests, especially on turbocharged engines. Use high-quality synthetic oil. Let the engine warm up before driving hard. Keep a maintenance log. Do not skip fluid changes on any system. Address small problems immediately before they become catastrophic ones. These are habits that cost almost nothing but add tens of thousands of miles to your engine's life. Think of maintenance as prevention, not an afterthought. German engineers did not invent this philosophy. They resisted it. And when their engines started failing at half the mileage of their Japanese competitors, they quietly copied it. Before I wrap up, hit that like button if this changed how you think about oil changes. If you have not subscribed yet, do that now, and turn on the bell notification so you do not miss the next video. Leave a comment below and tell me, are you following the manufacturer's interval, or are you changing your oil more frequently? I want to hear your experience. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.